Today I am going to show you how to paint a really easy galaxy in acrylics, but these techniques will also work for oil painters. This would be a great painting for a beginner to start with. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind La Cree Fine Art. Today's painting is being done on a Fredrix watercolor canvas board. Super smooth, makes it really easy to get the finer detail and smooth blending, so if that's something that you struggle with, I would recommend trying these out. Although the Blue Label canvases and linen canvases are also very smooth. But point is, if you're having a hard time getting smooth blending on your acrylic paintings, you want to go with something that's a lot smoother. For this painting, I'm using Liquitex Basics acrylic paints. I will have a link below to those in the video description as well, along with the colors that I used in case you want to copy this exactly. If you are supporters over on Patreon, the real-time version of this painting is available for you now, complete with voiceover, so make sure to head over and check that out. I will be using water mixed in with my Liquitex Basics paint to thin this out a bit. And I do have a video explaining why that's okay to use. I know a lot of people ask about using water with acrylic. It's totally fine. There are a few factors to keep in mind, but I'll have a card pop up. Definitely check that out. So to start with, I'm using my orange, titanium white, and yellow for the center, and then I mix my purple dioxazine with some red for that magenta, and I will blend out more and more to where I have more purple as I work out from here. Just rinsing my brush to get rid of the other color before I move on to the purple. Again, I don't worry about my brush strokes because I'm going to use a mop brush to blend. This all stays wet long enough that I can blend that out with that poofy, it looks like a blush applicator brush. That is actually what that brush is. It's a makeup brush. They don't shed as bad as the art brushes. So I call it a mop brush, but technically it's a makeup brush. But look at how it will get rid of my brush strokes, just soften those out. But it's okay if some of the brush strokes show, and I think that's important to understand. If you are completely new to acrylic paints, don't worry if you're having a hard time brushing out all of those brush strokes. It's okay. They can stay there because you're going to hide it with the rest of the stuff that we're going to be doing in this. So the next thing I'm going to do is to flick white paint. I'm going to use a stiff round brush after this dries. I will take a stiff round brush with a little bit of water, and I'm going to use a palette knife, and I will pull that palette knife towards me. It's important to note that you don't want to pull it away from you. You'll flick yourself in the face with stars. So by pulling the brush away from or towards me, I can splatter stars all over my scene. Now I'm going to do this in 2 layers. This first layer will get somewhat covered up, and that is totally okay. I'm doing that on purpose to create depth because I'm going to glaze over these. This is just kind of my background layer of stars. So I don't need to flick a lot. I'm going to rinse that brush off and set it to the side. Notice that I don't ever leave my brushes setting in water. That is a good way to damage them. So I'm going to dry that completely. Next, I am going to start creating some texture with a plastic Ziploc bag. You can use a plastic shopping bag if you happen to have those around. And I'm going to fan that out a little bit with a slightly damp brush. There's not much water on this. I just want to start creating some texture for my galaxy. Again, going to fan that out slightly. I don't care if I have brush strokes. I'm just building up texture, and I'm going to glaze color over this, so it's going to soften it out anyway. I'm using my titanium white for this. Now remember, you don't want to glaze with white because you can see how I start getting that fuzzy, foggy look. That's fine for what I'm doing now, but if you're trying to actually glaze color, don't use titanium white. But for this, again, I'm just dabbing some in there, softening out my edges. Going to go ahead and dry that. I need to make sure that that is completely dry before I start glazing. Otherwise, I will just lift off the wet paint from the canvas. I can't stress that enough. Make sure that it's dry. So now I'm going to be taking another brush. This one is a Taklon Bristled Filbert, and I'm going to glaze, which means lots of water, smaller amount of paint, and glaze my color where I want it. And if it doesn't blend really well, all I'm going to do is take that stiff round brush that I used earlier for flicking the stars. It's still a little bit damp from when I cleaned it earlier. I can use that just to smudge out the edges here and there. You'll see right there where I'm smudging those edges where it was a little too harsh. Adding more paint. And just letting that overlap into the purple, a little bit into the yellow, and I'm just going to layer like this until I like how it looks. Lots of layering. And I will glaze more purple over the purple areas. And even though I'm covering the stars, you can still see through this. This is a translucent paint, so you can see the stars underneath, so it just makes it look like the stars are farther away, which is helping me to build depth in this very easily. Once this is completely dry, I'm going to go ahead and start forming a little bit more detail or shape in my actual galaxy. Now, just remember, when you're layering with your acrylic paints, if you layer wet paint over slightly, it's starting to dry, it's not completely dry yet, you can lift off some of those previous layers. So make sure you're letting it dry in between layers. Going to go ahead and add a little bit more detail in here. And again, this is something to play with. Don't stress yourself out that it doesn't look perfect or a previous layer looked better. Just keep layering until you get the texture that you want. It will all come together in the end. Bad layers are no big deal. They just add more texture, more depth to the end result. So don't kick yourself if you have a layer where you're like, oh my gosh, 2 layers ago looked so much better. Just keep layering until it looks good. You can see I'm adding these little bits of white, and then I'm slightly fanning those out with the stiff round brush, which is slightly damp, not very wet at all. Just pulling that down to create a bit more with the texture. Now I'm flicking the white paint again. You want to make sure that this brush is completely dry. Mine was too wet, and so it wasn't working, so I had to grab a dry brush so that I could really flick those stars. This is going to give you the most realistic look with stars by flicking the paint. You can also use an old toothbrush and flick the white paint that way. Those work very well also. I want to point out how dirty my water well is at this point. It is okay. Your water does not need to be perfectly clean. The water that's in there is just barely tinting it. It will not affect the actual painting. Don't feel like you constantly have to dump your water. It can be pretty dirty and still okay. So now I'm going to move on to the silhouette. This is a very basic silhouette, just painting in a mountain scene, and I'm dabbing the edges. I don't want a straight line for my mountain. Since I'm going to be painting palm trees, I need a more tropical looking mountain scene, which means there would be lots of trees and bushes there. So I'm just kind of dabbing that on there. Again, I'm using a Taklon bristled filbert to block this in. Once that is there, I'm going to take a round brush, this is a Simply Simmons brush, and draw in the trunks of my palm trees. I want to make sure that I'm pushing harder towards the base of the palm tree than I am towards the top. That way it ends up being thicker. The harder you push on one of these brushes, the thicker the line is. So by pushing harder at the base and then adding less pressure as I get towards the tip, that will easily allow me to have a thicker base and thinner top of the trunk. Adding the little areas where the palm fronds are going to be. I'm not filling those in yet with this brush. I'll switch to a smaller liner brush for that. And my liner brush is a synthetic hog-haired liner brush. I believe the one that I'm using is either a number 2 or a number 3. And now I'm just going to pull the little wisps coming off of what I already have there. Basically, I'm making them look fluffy. These lines are all slightly curved so that I do have a very natural, flowy feel to it. And I'm going to fill all of those in. I will also make sure that I've got a few of those palm fronds sticking up from the mountain itself so that it also looks natural, like some are down lower and just the tops of them are showing through this scene. Just go around here. And this is a very, very easy painting. Again, anybody can do this. This would work great if you wanted to paint a landscape, a cityscape, any type of silhouette in front of it would be perfect for this sky. Because the sky really is where the interest is. So you can get away with having a really basic silhouette and it will still be very interesting for people to look at. And because this is such a quick painting, it's absolutely perfect if you need a last-minute Christmas gift for somebody. You can paint this for them very quickly. There is my finished painting, and as you can see, depending on the lighting where you take the photo, that'll make a big difference. This wasn't under bright light, so it's much darker than the other version that you saw in the video, but it's the same painting. And if you are someone who prefers slower videos, I do have the real-time version of this painting available over at Patreon right now, along with hundreds of other slower videos, so make sure to head over and check that out. I have to go to Best Buy and buy a new microphone for my live streams. Hopefully I'll have that by tonight's live stream. Working in colored pencil, by the way. Link will be in the video description. But it's like 30 degrees outside and I'm a pansy and I don't like the cold. Pansies don't like cold. We just don't. Especially those of us who are originally from Southern California. That's how much I love you guys. I'm going to go brave this weather so that I can get a better microphone for you. Seriously, it looks really cold out there. Wait, don't leave yet. Did you hit the subscribe button? Because you should. You should do that. I already have over 600 art videos on this channel. See that card right there? You can wait, if this is this way. Wrong. See that card right there? You can click that. Start watching more. Okay, I'm just getting awkward now.